All right, hey guys, Travis Fulton here. Wanted to do a follow-up from the Stripe Show podcast that I host. Had Chris Como on. Really good episode there. First one of the 2023 season. Chris, of course, has done so much in the industry, instruction industry, with his research, his curious mind. Always enjoy talking to him on the podcast. We talked about Jason Day. He's been working with Jason Day now, I believe, for about 2 years, and there's some changes happening with Jason Day's swing, and really most all of them are around protecting his back. Of course, Jason has the bad back, has missed a lot of time from his back, and what they're doing with his swing is really designed to take pressure off of his back to see how long Jason Day can play this game. I think it's all about just extending his career as long as they can. And what you're seeing with Jason now, and I talk about this a lot on my Instagram page at Travis Fulton Golf, is really this change of knee flex. And I talk a lot about this window that happens between the knees. So from this target line view, if I was to take it to the top of the swing, you're not going to see much space in here open up. And that's really because the trail knee is staying flexed, where I'm just keeping it flexed and I'm turning the upper and not so much the lower. And as a result of that, the pelvis is staying pretty level. Right? The right side of my pelvis, the left side of my pelvis is staying pretty level. What you're seeing with Jason now, and particularly in practice, when he's hitting balls in practice, and I think he's trying to transfer this as much as he can to the golf course, which is tough. If you've ever made a swing change before, you know it's difficult to transfer these things out to the golf course. When you watch him hit now, and I've posted some of these videos, and we talked about it in the podcast, you're starting to see a little window open up. You're starting to see a little daylight in here open up between the knees. And when you're getting a little more of that daylight, now you're getting a little more of a turn in the right hip. That right hip's working a little bit more up and back, and the right side of the pelvis now is higher. The right side of the pelvis is getting higher. There's a little bit of a change in knee flex, and then there's that little window opening up. So stand in front of the mirror if you're trying to get a little more lower body movement in the backswing, not laterally. We're not trying to sway. We're trying to turn and get a little window in there, a little space in there. Now, what's interesting is, in Chris talking about this, is it wasn't so much just thinking about the knees. They're not just thinking about trying to just take that right knee and straighten it back and hyperextend the leg like this, where you see a lot of this knee straightening up, kind of a la Dustin Johnson or Jordan Spieth. There are players who are trying to keep a little more flexion in the right knee. They're not trying to straighten as much. They have perhaps too much of that. For Chris and Jason, what they're trying to do is really just get the pelvis, this pelvis to move. Let the right side of the pelvis climb and get a little bit deeper with the turn. And as a result of that, that right knee is starting to give. Right? They're starting to lose a little bit of that flexion in that right knee just because of the way the pelvis is moving. So there's probably a couple of different ways you can go about it. I'm not afraid to talk about the knee. I'm not afraid to kind of feel, all right, yeah, the right side's higher, but let that right leg stand up a little bit. Feel that climbing. So you can get after it with the pelvis, you can get after it with the knee. But I think at the end of the day, when you look at very much now the modern swing, we've come out of this idea of turning the upper and not the lower. You don't have to lose flexion in the trail knee to play great golf. That's not what I'm saying. But I think if you're trying to free some things up, you're trying to take some pressure off the back like Jason Day is, then don't be afraid to let the right side of the pelvis climb. Don't be afraid to let the trail knee lose some flexion. Don't be afraid to get a little window in here between the knees. And when you're doing that, you'll feel yourself kind of loading a little bit more towards the right heel. You'll feel the thoracic spine, the shoulders being able to turn a little bit more. This left shoulder wants to come across a little bit more. I think that's pretty good advice for most, and certainly something Jason Day is starting to have some success with. And I'm expecting really big things in 2023 from Jason Day, because I do think this is translating into a little better iron play. I want to finish with this second point that came from the podcast with Chris Como. This second point talks about the shaft and really its relationship to this trail form. If you go to my site, if you watch the podcast, you will see swings with Jason Day where this shaft is starting to kind of lay down a little bit more on this right form. Historically, Jason Day has been kind of up in this range where it's in between the forearms. A little steeper plane angle down through the zone. He certainly had a lot of success with that back in 2015. He was the #1 player in the world, won 7 times. So Jason Day is fully capable, hands and arms, body, all of these things, right knee flex, a little steeper coming down. He played at a very high level. I do think through that process probably wasn't the best for his lower back and has now learned with the help of Chris this change of knee flex, this movement in the pelvis, perhaps now getting the shaft to come down a little flatter angle on the right forearm, and then through the impact zone allows him to rotate a little bit freer through the zone and not feel the need to probably have to hang back a little bit with side bend. And I think that's one of the real key points in the podcast that Chris talked about. We don't want to get a shallowing effect through impact as a function of the spine taking on more side bend right. Side bend right would be this way. Side bend left would be this way. You'll see a lot of players, when they come down through impact, they'll start to back the spine up, and they're doing that to try to shallow the shaft out or shallow out late through the impact zone and not be so steep. And oftentimes that's a result of this shaft coming down on this more vertical plane angle in between the forms. And of course, we'll see a lot of amateurs, they're just way out here. And usually the higher handicaps, when they get out here, they'll just kind of continue to go left, chicken wing, all of those things, path is way left, and they hit this big pull fade. But better players, they'll kind of sense that, and what they'll do is then they'll come into here and they'll kick the shaft this way late, and the spine will start to take on that side bend to the right, and that's tough on the lower back. So this shallowing effect of the shaft, or this shallowing effect through the zone, we don't want to get it as a function of the spine taking on excessive side bend to the right. So I think when you look at Jason, and you look at what he's doing in the backswing, and you look at now this club shaft getting a little bit more on this right forearm, well, from here now, I don't think he's going to really have to feel the need to take on that side bend. I think he's going to feel like he can just kind of turn and let the club kind of work back around the other side. And I think when you add all those things up, it's going to be better and more conducive on his back. And I think that's going to be really, really important for the longevity of Jason Day's career. So wanted to follow up on that. It was a great podcast. Go check it out. Stripe Show Podcast. You can check it out on audio on all the platforms, or the video right here on YouTube at Travis Fulton Golf. Thank you so much. See you next time.